Young Edna loved her father. He was a doctor, one of the best. When sickness called, he answered. When people were on death's door, he brought them back. There was nobody on this planet she wanted to be more than him. But that would never happen because Edna was a woman and this was Somaliland. When she was 8 years old, he went away on a business trip, off saving lives somewhere, no doubt. And because they knew that he would have disapproved, her mother and grandmother decided it was time to make her a woman, to carve her little body apart. They held her down and did the unthinkable. A razor flashed, an egg was broken, and some needle was pierced through skin. Edna Aden would never be whole again. She would be mutilated forever. And she would spend the rest of her life making sure it never happened to anyone else. At 81 years old, Edna Aden is one of the most important Somali women to have ever existed. It would be nearly impossible to have a more fulfilling life than hers, no matter your background. She was the first Somali woman to get sent to Britain for an education where she became a midwife. She was the foreign minister of a country the world claims doesn't exist. She married and divorced the nation's first prime minister, one of the Somali Republic's most important men. She started a hospital, a university, and a national pharmacy in the bombed-out killing grounds left over from the Civil War. She has acted independently in a place where independence was all but impossible for her. She has never done what society told her to do. She always did something better, freer, more her. But most of all, more than any of that, she has led the fight against one of our world's worst tragedies, a tragedy we virtually never discuss: the ritual mutilation of little girls. And with that said, perhaps it's time I let her talk for a while.
My name is Edna Aden Ismail. I'm from Somaliland. I'm a nurse by profession and a midwife. I happen to be one of very few Somali girls who had access to education. My father had been the most senior Somali health professional in his time, and I always wished that one day I would know enough about healthcare to be able to look after sick people the way my father looked after them. All my life, or during my study years, I was studying to learn skills that would help me help my people. I love what I'm doing. I feel very passionate about it, which is the reason why I built a hospital after I retired. I speak for the rights of children. I speak for the rights of women. I speak for the rights that I was denied as a child. And because I'm a midwife, and because I'm a woman myself, and because I've also suffered the consequences of female genital mutilation, and no child should have part of its body cut out because of tradition. And then because I'm also a midwife, and my job is to deliver a baby through a birth passage. And when that part of the female body has been damaged and distorted, and it delays the progression of that baby through that passage, which of course can cause asphyxia and kill that baby. There is no way that we can look away and say, this is not my business, this is not my problem. It is the problem of every responsible adult to protect that child against something which is totally wrong.
Somaliland is one of a number of countries where nearly a full 100% of women receive some form of ritual mutilation in childhood, with nearly 95% forced to suffer the most extreme form. As a young FGM campaigner explained to me in graphic detail, this type of mutilation is medically referred to as severe, and trust me, there's no way to overstate how awful this is. But it's real. And as horrible as it is to hear, I think it must be acknowledged. After all, we can't change what we refuse to confront. So let's talk severe. What does that mean exactly? And let me warn you right now, it's very hard to stomach. Nobody would blame you if you stopped watching right here. Severe mutilation is defined by removing pretty much everything you'd think of as the vagina. The labia majora, the minora, and the clitoris are all carved off. In many rural places, it's then stuck back together with thorns and an egg yolk. 7-year-old girls left with a tiny hole barely capable of evacuating urine. It's beyond disgusting. It's beyond horrific. I'm virtually an emotional robot, and yet the pamphlet alone was enough to turn my stomach. This is a living nightmare inflicted on 200 million women currently alive today, with millions more coming under threat every year. And the real crux of it is that there's no good reason to do this. It's entirely done because it's done. To better fit in among the mutilated, you have to be mutilated yourself. Mothers want their daughters to look like them, to keep trauma the norms so that their own trauma remains normalized, to help them feel like what was done to them wasn't an unjust travesty, but a natural part of life.
Nobody hurts their child because they want to hurt their child. They're doing it because they feel that this is their responsibility and their duty to perform FGM on this daughter, because it's been done over the centuries. Like grandparents did it, and it is handed down, and they just don't know why. And they need to be told that it is totally against the teachings of Islam. And if it were a religious requirement, then millions and millions of women in other Muslim countries would have done it. And they don't. Women in Saudi Arabia are not cut up and mutilated. They're not mutilated in Pakistan or Afghanistan or Malaysia. The reason they do it is an old traditional practice. And it has to stop. It kills, it damages, it interferes with the girl's reproductive rights and future, and it has no place in this day and age.
Solving an issue as deeply rooted as FGM is by no means an easy task. It requires no less than a complete overhaul of an international popular social norm. And what's more, to fight this war properly almost necessitates that the soldier have experienced it themselves. Without a true understanding of the trauma it forces on its victims, it can be very hard to separate the horror from the horrified. For those grappling with it secondhand, the key to helping is often just remembering that a monstrous act creates a victim, not a monster. But that said, this can all be changed. No culture exists in a stasis, and these are not the barbarisms of a lesser people. Edna Aden, her hospital, her disciples, they're all proving that this can change. That our choices drive our actions, not history. It just takes time. It takes effort. It takes awareness. This is not a problem that can be solved through hatred. It's not a fire that can be beaten with fire. The only way to stop this horror is with compassion and understanding. And that's precisely what she's here to give. Where society provided trauma, Edna provides counsel. Where they provided mutilation, she provides care. This is not a woman concerned for her own safety. Her choices have always come with the very real risk of being murdered. And yet, she still managed to inspire hundreds of disciples. And every year she makes more.
Some people call me a troublemaker because I speak up for what I think is right. I'm not on good terms with those people who don't believe in the same principles and rights that I believe in. They threaten me, but I drive my own car, I walk in the street, I speak my mind. When my day will come, it will come. I am protected by the people. I feel loved, I feel welcomed by the people, and I think the love I hold for my people, I think, also flows in the opposite direction as well. That's what keeps me here. But I love my country, Somaliland, because here I can move things, I can change things, I can influence things. And I can serve as a beacon of hope.
Edna Aden is 81 years old, and before long, she's going to die. But her legacy will live for generations to come, because this was never about her. It was always about the future, about change. And while the gears may turn slowly, they are turning. The next generation has already begun stepping up to the plate, and they're no less determined than she was. When we were researching this episode, we spent the day with doctors Mariam Dahir and Amal Farah. They are some of the most headstrong, intelligent, and articulate people I've ever met. Women simply oozing with purpose. We watched as Dr. Dahir powered through half of the audience of girls walking out of her lecture in solidarity. She knows she's working from the ground up. She knows that people always shoot the messenger, but she's not giving in. And what's more, she's not alone. Today, Somaliland has hundreds of women just like her. There's an entire generation perched on the shoulders of that giant. Edna. Edna Aden is a hero of the world. There aren't two ways about it. In a society that told her she had to cover her face, her smiling cheeks stared back. In a society that said women shouldn't be educated, her university stared back. And in a society that said little girls should be mutilated, her hospital stared back. No society is static. There will always be agents of change. If you don't like something you see in the world around you, you don't just have to sit quietly and let it pass you by. You can speak up. Remember Edna Aden. This is Rare Earth.